Welcome to What's Up San Mateo. I am Luis Palacios.
And I'm Joy Marcus. In our first segment, I'll sit down with my distinguished guests, retired journalists Stanhope Gould and Tom DeVries, to talk about changes in broadcast news.
And in our next segment, I will talk with my guests about finding solutions to homelessness in San Mateo County. That's coming up right on
What's Up San Mateo? As everyday life has changed exponentially over the last half century, so has the production and content of news. We are privileged to have with us today two veterans of the broadcast news industry, now retired, who will talk to us about some of those changes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and why we should care. Tom DeVries and Stanhope Gould are both well-respected, even legendary investigative journalists. Our time constraints here prevent a full enumeration of their experience. However, both men started their careers in Chicago reporting for print media. In addition to being a Chicago Sun-Times reporter, Tom has been a magazine writer, correspondent, and producer for NBC, CBS, Discovery, America's Most Wanted, and several series on PBS. He also was a reporter for KQED Newsroom and a member of KRON's Target 4 investigative unit in San Francisco as the Oakland bureau chief of KRON News. Stanhope, 7 years older than Tom, quickly morphed from a Chicago City News Bureau beat reporter into a broadcast news pioneer, eventually heading up the first investigative unit for the Cronkite Show at CBS in New York, and later he led the investigative team at NBC, also in New York. Full disclosure, Stanhope Gould is my husband. Tom DeVries is a very good longtime friend. Tom, Stanhope, thanks so much for your generosity in being here.
Glad to be here.
Nice.
To start, Tom, I'd like you to tell us why we should care about news content and the ever-increasing news delivery systems.
Well, by the news delivery systems, Stan and I talked earlier about some of the news delivery systems, and I think the technology has given us an alternative to the gatekeepers. So there aren't any gatekeepers, where you have to curate your own news, and that's tricky business. And most of us, I don't think, really have a lot of time to do that. And I think people are busy and they're driving in their cars and taking care of their families and doing the job and so on. But I think we have to accept the fact that just like you have to balance your own checkbook and go grocery shopping and so forth, you're going to have to take responsibility for picking through this extraordinary variety of delivery systems on the internet, particularly on the web, and also on TV and radio and print, and find your own selection of news and keep track of it yourself. I don't think you can depend on, Walter or Stan or me to do it for you anymore, because that's no longer part of the business.
What I was wanting to get at is, why is it important for people to care about news at all?
Well, it's you're asking a guy who devoted his career to news. I don't mean why, because what will I do for work if people don't care about it? I think that if you're going to have a participatory democracy, if people are going to run their own communities, run their own school systems, run their own governments, instead of having benign dictators or not so benign dictators run them, then you got to be involved in the decisions that are being made by the public and for the public. And that information is supposed to come from the news. Okay. And I think, so why do we care? Well, because otherwise somebody else is going to run it, going to take care of it for you. And if you're comfortable with that, cool, but probably a bad idea.
And that's why it's so important for people to start filtering through the morass.
Got
to
no choice,
figure-
Joy. Got
yeah.
no choice. You had to filter the morass yourself, and instead of waiting for people to do it for you, because they aren't doing it anymore, and you have to make your own choices, and you have to kind of, yeah, you're right, filter yourself. You have to curate your own newspaper in a sense every day.
That's a big challenge. No?
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame in a real way because it's demanding time for people who already are busy, right?
Well, some news organizations, Stanhope, tell stories and make up their own facts.
Well,
Whereas
the-
whereas other news outlets tend to be meticulous in fact checking. So, like, what's up with that?
like being in the news for a long time, I'm always looking at the worst case. And there are a lot of worst cases in this vast panoply of news sources. The most obvious example being Fox, quote, News, which lies with some regularity and is the most powerful of the cable networks, beats MSNBC and CNN by a lot. And there's the virtual control of radio by conservative and sometimes loony departments of the political establishment. So you got to expect that, I guess. It's here. The technology is here, and you got to expect it. But Rupert Murdoch has emerged, as a worldwide force, and that's not a good idea.
I'm still having a hard time understanding why. I mean, just because they're conservative, why should they lie?
I don't know.
Not all conservative news people historically have lied about the facts.
I wonder how much they believe it.
You have to think of, go back to death panels. I mean, and stuff like that. That Fox News kept that alive for like a couple of years, year and a half anyway. And despite the fact that there were 2 Honolulu newspapers that announced Barack Obama's birth, and which you could find on the web.
Right. I guess I'm still trying to figure out, why has that changed? I mean, forgive me, but in the olden days, I think it's fair to say that there were some, you might not agree with their analyses, but
William
there were
Buckley,
some,
people like that,
William
yeah.
Buckley was, he didn't lie.
Look,
that
but
I can
this is not,
remember.
partisan press is not new in this country, and,
Right.
and neither is mistaking the facts. I mean, the papers, the yellow journalism period, there was a brief period in which we seem to have honored objectivity, but before that, the First Amendment was in fact written and to protect partisan,
Yeah.
wildly partisan. It was
Okay.
written to protect this kind
But there's
of
a
thing.
difference between partisanship and just lying.
Yeah, that's, it just,
Anyways.
anyways.
Partisanship is all right. MSNBC is partisan.
Well,
but
you give me the
They don't
bombs.
lie, as far as I know.
I'm not sure that misrepresentation, if that's the word, is a particularly new thing. Although
It may not
does
be new.
seem it does seem pretty dramatic and pretty flagrant now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. Do you think that's because of cable news, 24-hour cycles? Not that I listen to cable 24 hours.
We talked
a day.
before. You and I talked before about the idea that there's really what's going on now has kind of 2 veins. One's technology and one's, I said technique. And I'll say about the technology. The technology has made it possible to distribute information outside the channels. When Stan came up, there were 3 networks.
Right.
When I came up,
great.
there were really, there were 3 networks, and you got your information. If you watch television, you got your information from Huntley Brinkley or Walter Cronkite or whatever. There were not very many places. Now there are many sources of information. The technology has broken the lock. You no longer have to own a printing press or own a television station to distribute news.
Right.
I don't know why how can that be a bad thing? How can it be a bad thing that now it's not that hard to allow your voice to be heard?
I'll tell you how it can be a bad thing. Malcolm Gladwell has the answer. You need, and he maintains you need 10,000 hours of practice to get good at anything, whether you're an athlete, a violin player, or a journalist.
Correct.
Tom and I have had 10,000 hours in various capacities. We have had, been battered and bruised and mentored and all of that stuff to learn a craft. And these people out there, there may be brilliant people out there who can write terrific opinion essays and stuff like that, but that's not reporting. That's not the idea of who do you believe, and how do you check things out, and it's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into what I laughingly call journalism.
He and I have argued and fought and screamed at each other on 2 continents, as you know, but we agree totally on that. And that is not to be smug about it, but the fact is that like playing an instrument or playing a sport, being a reporter is a job that took years to learn. I'm embarrassed at how long it took me to learn how to do it and the mistakes I made in the process. It does take a long time to do it. Those jobs are, the money isn't there, the jobs aren't there, the opportunity to get the 10,000 hours or 5,000 hours or whatever are hard to come by now. And that's a problem because reporting, finding stuff out, making sure it's true is a craft, just like juggling balls in the air.
Right.
Sometimes I think that's what we're doing.
So what I'm hearing you guys say is, on the one hand, what is called citizen journalism or public
Right.
journalism, on the one hand, it makes things more democratic.
Correct.
On the other hand, the content, one receiving the content has to be extremely skeptical about the source and what's being said. I mean, the content.
I object to the idea of putting journalism after citizen or journalism after public. It ain't journalism. It can be opinion. It can be a lyrical essay about fall. It can be anything, but it's not determining, is this guy, lying to you or is he not lying?
I would say you have a
Okay.
citizen doctor. Do you want a citizen doctor? Do you want a citizen lawyer? I'm a journalist. I spent years learning how to do that.
So did I.
And gotten beat up and mentored and forced and trained and yelled at and so on. And it's the same thing. It's not that there's anything wrong with getting medical help from your mom. But if you're sick, you want a doc.
Yeah.
You want to cover a story with complications and layers and all kinds of things going wrong and stuff. Call a journalist.
Okay.
Not me. Don't call me, please.
And
We're retired.
And my 2 favorite journalists in the room. We have to wrap it up now, and I want to thank you both again for your comments. This has been a rich conversation about broadcast news, past, present, and future. I hope all you viewers out there learned something about the inextricable link between democratic processes and a well-informed public. Stanhope and Tom, thank you so much for contributing your time and valuable understanding of broadcast news. Don't go anywhere. We have a few short messages before Luis Palacios interviews his guest about homelessness in San Mateo County.
Don't just watch TV, make it.
In the College of San Mateo's Broadcasting Arts program, you can get hands-on, real-world production experience using professional digital equipment in the studio or field. Classes are held in a fully functioning broadcast station at KCSM-TV. Learn camera operation, audio engineering, lighting, producing, on-air talent, and more. Get turned on to a career in broadcasting at College of San Mateo.
Welcome to the second half of What's Up San Mateo. I am Luis Palacios, and today I will introduce you to a person that is doing a very important job for our community. She is Jill Downson, the Envision Shelter Network Program Director, and she is here to talk about poverty and homelessness in San Mateo. Welcome, Jill. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Of course. So I originally am from the Midwest, and I went to school. I got my bachelor's at Illinois State University in social services, and then I got a master's in social work from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana.
Wow, impressive.
Thank you.
Can you tell me where the shelter is located?
Of course. So Envision Shelter Network has a variety of different programs. We have 18 programs that span all the way from Daly City to San Jose. The shelter that I work with directly is called Haven Family House, and it's located in Menlo Park.
And what is your position at the shelter?
So I am the program director for Haven Family House. I'm in charge of the staff who do direct services, clinical services with the homeless families.
Nice. And for how long time have you been working with the Envision Shelter?
So I've been with Envision Shelter Network since 2007, so coming up on 7 years.
Nice. My first question is, why do people become homeless?
So there can be a variety of different reasons why a family or an individual could find themselves on the streets or becoming homeless. In recent times with the economy, we've seen a lot more first-time homeless families. So those who are living from paycheck to paycheck maybe get sick or lose a job or decrease in hours, then they don't have enough money to pay their rent.
How many people or families are homeless in San Mateo County?
So on a given night, we have a waiting list to get into our programs, and on a given night, there could be up to 55 families in San Mateo County who are homeless and in need of shelter. But it does range. Yeah.
What are the impacts of the homeless in children?
So it is obviously, one could imagine, it's very traumatizing for a child to become homeless, especially since children do thrive on stability. So a lot of times what we'll see is we can see, some trauma, we can see a little bit of maybe behavior problems or problems focusing in school, just a very different varieties of especially what else is leading towards the homelessness for the family.
And at the shelter, Envision Shelter, do you receive the whole family or a single person? What is the most common?
So at our shelter, we have in our agency, we have shelters for individuals and we have shelters for families. So our shelter is a shelter for a family. So we are a 23 interim housing facility. So we have 23 families. To be referred to our shelter, you have to have a minor child. So we can have mom, dad, and children. We could have a multi-generational family that includes grandma, dad, and child, as long as there's a minor child. That's the way that people get referred to our program. If you're an individual living on the street by yourself and you do not have minor children, we have other programs in San Mateo County that we refer you to.
In what type of programs, when a family gets into Envision Shelter, what are the programs that you offer to them or the help? Mainly trainings?
Yeah, so we have a variety of different services that once someone comes into our shelter, they can utilize. We call this practice beyond the bed. So we want to provide more than just a place to sleep and maybe a warm meal. We want to provide the social services and the education experience so that way families can take that time that they have in our program and find a place to live, work with an employment specialist to find a better job or maybe a job. As well as, parenting advice, health advice, referrals for mental health. It really varies. So when someone comes in, we do what we call like a psychosocial assessment or a case plan with that family, and we work with them on what goals do you want to focus on while you're here. And so from there, we're able to either provide them with specialists within our agency. For example, we have a mental health internship program where we can provide free counseling for individuals and families, or we can refer out. So if there's another agency within the community we have a collaboration with,
That's nice.
we'll refer there.
And what is the goal of Envision Shelter?
So Envision Shelter Network's primary goal is to really help people return to self-sufficiency and stable housing. So we want to help those people who are currently homeless have to never go through that situation again. So we give them the tools and the time, basically, to get back on their feet.
And what are the challenges that people face when they get off, Envision Shelter after you guys are done with the projects? What are the challenges for them outside?
That's a great question. there could be a variety of different things, right? So maybe while in shelter, they were able to get stabilized. And part of our program is instead of paying any program fee while you're there, you put 50% of your income into our savings plan. So then when you leave, you get that savings. And so you can take that and pay a security deposit or have a safety net. However, with a lot of our clients, if they still, even with that safety net, could be living paycheck to paycheck, depending on the housing they can find. We really try and help people find housing within their budget. But as you and probably all of our viewers know, we live in a very expensive area.
That's right.
And so it is difficult. A lot of people are paying over 50% of their income to find housing. So that could be something that maybe the cost of living in the area is hard, competition to maintain jobs, or competition to get a better job. A lot of our families may need to pursue additional education experience, things like that. So sometimes that can hold people up, but we do have a very good success rate of helping people go through the program and stay housed.
Do you have any histories where families come back again to the shelter? Once you are done with your projects and then they couldn't succeed and then they come back to you?
Well, we definitely have some, right? Because just with this economy alone, you can see how someone who is never been in this situation before could fall into a situation where they become homeless. So those who go through our program, they may be very stable for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, but if another crisis comes up, someone gets sick, maybe they're still living paycheck to paycheck because of cost of living, they could go through our shelter programs again. Yeah.
Can you tell us if you have anyone special that, after being at Envision Shelter and Get Outside succeed? Do you remember? Do you keep contact with them?
Yeah, well, the nice thing for us is that when people graduate from our program, 80% are looking for, at least at Haven Family House, are finding permanent housing, right? So that's a great success. We work with veterans who bring their families into the program, and they go through, the skills training and the assistance in finding someplace stable, and then they are in the community as regular taxpayers, just like you and I. So I can't think of one specific story. I could if you'd like.
I know many people.
Right. But the greatest thing for us is when a family runs into their case manager's office and says, I found an apartment, and they show us the lease, and we all celebrate and clap, or they do the same thing when they get a job. Like, here's my name tag, or here's, my pass to get into work. And so it's those steps that our clients are able to make with our support that really mean a lot.
Do you think when homeless are, on the red lights asking for money, do you think it's a good idea to support them, give them money, or is it better to tell them where they can get help, like Envision Shelter?
So anyone who is in need of help, there's a really easy way, whether you're in San Mateo County or Santa Clara County, you can dial 211, which is the United Way's informational phone call system. And so from there, they will talk to someone on the phone, and that person will determine what service they need. And a lot of times that's how we get our referrals, through either 211 or local core community center agencies. Personally, I really feel like it's a personal choice for individuals if they'd like to give money to someone who is homeless. But I always think, too, that it's a great alternative, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, to give what we call giving inside. So give to local agencies such as Envision Shelter Network, where we can take that dollar that you may give someone and stretch it as far as possible to make sure people are getting shelter and services.
And this question is about the community. Like, has locals, are we doing really something to help homeless people? Places like Envision Shelter, do you receive help from the community or government?
So much help for the community. We have a variety of different amazing donors, amazing volunteers who dedicate their time to come into our shelter and work one-on-one with our clients. They hold self-sufficiency workshops. They come and they help us clean the center and stage the units. We just could not do the work that we do without this community. So yeah, San Mateo County and Santa Clara County both do an amazing job of supporting agencies like Envision Shelter Network.
Is Envision Shelter doing activities to recount money to support the shelter, or do you just receive help from government?
So how our agency is funded, it's 60% funded with federal grants and money from different levels of the government. So federal, state, city, county. But 40%, surprisingly enough, comes from donations and our development department going out and reaching out to organizations and private individuals in the community and asking for assistance. So even though it's a little bit more public money, a lot of it is private, and we are very, very grateful for all that support.
Thank you, Jill, for being with us today and giving us your time. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you, Jill, for being with us. This was What's Up San Mateo. And remember, home is where you go when you run out of homes. I am Luis Palacios, and I will see you later.